Welcome to the Word for Life podcast, a daily devotional covering the entire Bible from Genesis to Revelation.
The next major event in Numbers is the departure of the Israelites from Sinai. We will read about it when we come to chapter 10. But before that happens, the Levites have to dismantle and move the tabernacle. And in order to dismantle and move the tabernacle, they would need carts and oxen to do so. That is why here in chapter 7, we see how the Israelites provided these carts and oxen and also many other precious items at the tabernacle's dedication. Verse 2 onwards we read, Then the leaders of Israel, the heads of families, who were the tribal leaders in charge of those who were counted, made offerings. They brought as their gifts before the Lord 6 covered carts and 12 oxen, an ox from each leader and a cart from every 2. These they presented before the Lord. Verse 6 says, So Moses took the carts and oxen and gave them to the Levites. And not only that, verse 10 says, When the altar was anointed, the leaders brought their offerings for its dedication and presented them before the altar. We see from verse 10 to verse 88 the offerings that each of the 12 tribes gave at the tabernacle's dedication. Now, for modern readers, these descriptions may strike as tedious because all the tribes gave a similar kind of offering. So it might look like the same thing is repeated again and again and again. You see, the longest chapter in the Bible is Psalm 119, and the next longest chapter is Numbers 7. So you see that by way of a long description, the offerings that the people of Israel brought to the Lord are recorded one after another. Why is this lengthy description of the offerings that the people of Israel brought to God? You see, friends, this tells us that God honors those who give Him. A major part of worship is giving to the Lord. Sometimes God's people can think of giving as a small part in their worship. But this chapter 7 tells us that offering is a major part in God's sight. As we read in the New Testament, God loves a cheerful giver. So here, in a 12-day festival, each of the tribes of Israel brought gifts to the Lord each day of the 12-day festival. The last verse of this chapter, verse 89, reads, Finally, when Moses entered the tent of the meeting to speak with the Lord, he heard the voice speaking to him from between the 2 cherubim above the atonement cover on the Ark of the Covenant law. In this way, the Lord spoke to him. There are 2 things. You see, worshipping the Lord includes giving to the Lord. But that is not all. Here, Moses entered God's presence to do 2 things. Number 1, to speak to the Lord and to hear from the Lord. Friends, Moses, being the leader of this great people, had so much to say to the Lord. He had so many burdens to place before the Lord. For Moses, this tabernacle was the place where he would unburden his heart to the Lord. Even today, believers know the value of unburdening their hearts to the Lord. And that is where they get their peace from the Lord. But Moses also heard the voice speaking to him from between the cherubim. Often believers speak to the Lord, but seldom hear from the Lord. As much as Moses had things to say to the Lord also had few things to say to him. On Mount Sinai, God spoke his laws to Moses. But apart from that, God had so much to say to Moses. Friends, hearing from the Lord is so very important. So many leaders in the Bible failed to listen from the Lord. Samson was a Nazarite who was given a special mission at birth by the Lord. But the one thing he failed to do is to listen to the Lord. What if he had had the practice of hearing from the Lord on a regular basis? His life would have gone in a different direction. Dear friends, hearing from the Lord is equally important as speaking to the Lord.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow for the next episode of the Word for Life podcast.